Hi, my name is Lena Papadopoulos. I'm 30 years old. I currently live in Florida in the US. I grew up in South Carolina. My parents were immigrants from Greece, so I very much grew up between these two cultures, between the US and Greece. And I went to Greece every summer as a child. I grew up speaking the language. Most of my family is still there. And also with my parents, when we would travel to or from Greece, we often stopped in other countries. We traveled a bit together as a family as well. So these were sort of my first exposures to the rest of the world. And then when I was in university, I lived in a cultural exchange community, and so I was surrounded by international students from all over the world who had completely different upbringings and perspectives and religions and ways of seeing the world. And I took my first trip by myself when I was an undergraduate. I studied abroad in New Zealand, and I just developed this obsession with exploring the world. So when I graduated, I traveled some more, then I did a little bit of work, and then I went to Tanzania and I taught English. And following that, I moved to Colorado and I went to get a master's in cultural anthropology and international development studies. And after I finished that, I moved to Asia, and I lived there for a couple of years in China and then in Thailand. And while I was there, I worked for a nonprofit social enterprise, and we ran leadership development programs in international schools around the world. And so I was working in lots of different countries and having the opportunity to work with a lot of third culture kids, because that's mostly who are the students who were in our programs and at these schools that we worked at. And I have since moved back to the U.S., live here in Florida. I work at Florida State University as the Intercultural Programs Coordinator in our Center for Global Engagement. And so my job is really to provide opportunities for students to learn about other parts of the world and to learn about other cultures and to meet people from around the globe. And I'm also really interested in continuing work with third culture kids in the future. So I've considered potentially getting a master's of social work and being a counselor at an international school, some sort of way to stay connected to TCKs, because over time I've really come to identify with a lot of the challenges of being a TCK, even if I'm not necessarily one myself. And so I very much consider myself a global citizen, and my family and my upbringing and my experiences growing up definitely played a role in that. Not only because I grew up as a first generation American and sort of part of these two cultures, and because my family traveled, but it was something so much deeper than that. And it was, I think, really tied to the expectations that were placed on me by my parents. So Dr. Shefali Tsabari, in her book The Conscious Parent, she talks a lot about how parents stifle the unique spirit of their children. And this is not done intentionally. It's very often actually done because our parents have the best intentions for us, right? They want the best things for us. They want us to have a better life than they did. But because of the expectations that this creates, we as children often feel a need to be a certain way, or to conform, or to live up to these expectations. And in doing so, we sort of squash our own unique self and spirit. And so we sort of live to gain the approval of our parents, and consequently everyone around us. And so this was very much the case for me. I really wanted to please my parents. I wanted to be what they would consider successful, even if those things weren't important to me. And and because of this, because I was sort of pushing back who I really was, I very often felt misunderstood. And because I was trying to please everybody and be a certain way, and because I wasn't really being true to myself, I mean, there was this constant push and pull, and I think a lot of unhappiness and resentment as a result. So actually, really early on in my travels, my mom said to me that she felt like I was running away from myself. And I was so offended that she would say that, because again, it resulted in me feeling misunderstood, like she just doesn't get me. Um, but in a way, she was right, and in a way, she wasn't right. So I think I was very much running away from a version of myself, from a stifled version of myself, and I was trying to run toward who I really was. And so with moving around and with traveling, I was trying to find where I belonged and where I fit in and where I made sense, because I didn't feel like I belonged or fit in or made sense in my family or in my hometown or in either culture that I was a part of. I was just sort of different than everyone around me. Um, and so what I discovered as I moved around was that I was able to be myself. In a new place, in a new environment where there were no preconceived notions of who I should be, there were no expectations of what I should be. It was easy. It was easy for me to be myself. And I became addicted to this experience of allowing myself to be myself. And the reason I needed to keep hopping around and moving was because the longer I stayed in a place and the more comfortable I became and the more I sort of fell into a routine, it was easy for me to revert back to all the things that I had been conditioned to think and feel about myself. It was easy for me to go back to all of the things that had been internalized for me as a child, that I needed to do a certain XYZ thing to be successful, that I wasn't good enough, that nobody could understand me, that I wasn't loved or lovable. These sort of internalizations that I had done as a child, well, they would resurface once I fell back into what was comfortable. And so then I needed to escape that. And then I needed to move again so that I could have this experience of being myself again, like myself, uninhibited and without the pressure to conform to what was expected of me. And so I was addicted to this movement. And as Pico Iyer says, he says that the wanderer luster is not so much susceptible, like, to an addiction to movement, but a commitment to transformation. And I'm a little bit of both, addicted to movement and addicted to transformation. And it wasn't always about the transformation from my inauthentic self to my authentic self, but it was also about becoming a better person, because the more that I traveled and moved around and saw these different ways of life, the more I learned and the more perspective I gained and the more open-minded I became and the less I judged the things around me. And I think this is what it means to be a global citizen, to be open to the world, to see the interconnectedness between everything and everyone, to accept people for who they are, to accept different worldviews, to see something that you don't understand and to not judge it. So this movement very much cultivated global citizenship, I think, within me. And so up to now, I've lived or studied or worked or traveled in over 40 countries. And so every place that I've spent time in and every person I've come to know has molded and shaped who I am now. And who I am now is different than who I was 3 weeks ago, than who I was 3 months ago, 3 years ago, and who I will be in 3 days could be different too, because I'm constantly pushing myself to learn and grow as a person. And so in all of this movement, I've sort of come to feel that I belong everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And so this has really fostered a sense of rootlessness and restlessness in me, right? I'm not very stable. It's hard for me to plant roots. It's hard for me to stay in a place. And so this cycle of finding where I belong, finding where I'm understood, it just repeats itself. And for a long time, I just felt like something was wrong with me. I felt like I was so different than all of the people around me who wanted to get married and wanted to have kids, because I don't really want that. I'm open to it for sure. If that comes down the road, then I can accept that, but I can also accept that if it's not part of my life, my story, it's okay for me. But people think that's weird. And so I really struggled to understand, like, what is wrong with me? And I tried to fix myself. And I mean, even me moving to Florida and renting this apartment and buying all of this furniture that's around me, all of this was an attempt to fix what's wrong with me. And I've just come to realize, like, nothing is wrong with me. I'm totally okay. I'm just different. I don't take the traditional path, and I don't make traditional decisions, and that's okay, because I've come to accept that my life is my own, and I belong to my parents in a sense, but I actually don't at all. Like, I'm my own person, my own unique spirit and soul, with my own signature. And so there's nothing wrong with me, and I don't need to feel that way, and I don't need to conform to anybody's expectations, because I just need to live in a way that makes me feel happy. And that is to be a wanderer, and to move, and to be unstable, and to maybe be seen as weird, and I'm okay with that. I really love Khalil Gibran's poem on children. He talks a lot about this, about what Dr. Shefali Tsabari talks about in her book, The Conscious Parent. And so I'd really like to read this poem to you, or part of it. So, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you, and though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. So I really love this. I just love how it is encouraging parents to let their children be who they are. And actually, I'd really encourage you to read The Conscious Parent by Dr. Tsabari. Because if you are a parent, I think it will help you understand your child and understand how your child responds and reacts to the things you do and say, and the expectations that you place on them. And if you're a child, which we all are, children of parents in some way, then I also encourage you to read it to better understand your relationship with your parents, and why they did the things that they did, oftentimes with good intentions, or because they just didn't know any different. And I think it really helps to understand them, but also yourself. And so, yeah, I encourage you to be true to yourself and to who you really are. because for me, I think being a citizen of the world, being a global citizen, it's also, it's so much about human connection, and it's so much about relationships, um, and just the interconnectedness of everything in the world. And whenever we allow ourselves to be pushed into traditional paths of success, we have to have a good job, and we have to make a lot of money, and all of these things that were used to defining our worth and our value, um, we sacrifice. I think we sacrifice what's really important, and that's each other, and valuing each other. And so, um, I really just encourage you, yeah, to be true to yourself and to who you are, um, and let that be what it is, independent of what is expected of you. And so I really appreciate you listening to me and allowing me to share with you. And so thank you. Best of luck in your lives, and whatever dreams you choose to follow, and whatever journey lays ahead for you. Thank you.